Welcome to Crown Connections with Rob Clemens. Today we've got a special treat. We have none other than Tim McGinnis with us, and I feel like usually I feel fairly confident coming on these things. I feel like I've got a good radio voice and all this stuff, but I am going to be trumped today 100% with this guy in front of me. So welcome to the show.
About that. Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah. You know what? A lot of great things going on out here right now. We got political season in mid-swing. You just had Russell Fry in your beautiful, famous toastery restaurant here. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with that side of things right now, on the political side of things.
Well, unless you don't get out of the house much or watch TV much, you know that there's a campaign out there. You have people running for county council, for state legislature. Big one in our area is the 7th Congressional District race. That's Tom Rice. He's a 5-term incumbent. Going up against Russell Fry, who has former President Trump's endorsement. It's a big race, and I'm anxiously awaiting June 14th, which is primary day, to see what happens.
You know, June 14th, it's a big day. It is Flag Day. It is actually my birthday. And so in third place, you have this little campaign stuff going on. Right? That was awesome. Hey, so talk about, and we want to go into a bunch of different details today, but talk about your thoughts on when you have somebody who's been doing it for 5 terms. A lot of times people tend to think they're going to have a leg up. Obviously, there's a name recognition and things. What are your thoughts on these multi-term type of things? Is it good? Is it bad? Neither?
You know, before I got into politics, and if you would have asked me, I would have been staunchly in favor of term limits. Once you get into it and you realize the work that goes into serving like that, I'll give you an example. Ways and Means in most legislatures, state legislatures, and in our federal government, Ways and Means is really the most important committee because that controls the purse strings. That's where all the money comes from. And Ways and Means is an extremely powerful committee. Tom Rice is on that committee. He has been since he was a freshman. Usually you have to serve about 4 or 5 terms before you get appointed to that type of committee, either in the state legislature or in the federal government. But we do have, our congressman does sit on the Ways and Means committee that controls those purse strings. So that's a big thing. However, Tom Rice voted to impeach President Trump. That proved to be the beginning of a lot of turmoil for Tom. And Russell Fry, who got the former president's endorsement, he's running a tough race against Congressman Rice, as is Ken Richardson, our local school board chairman. We have several other people in that race, including Barbara Arthur, Dr. Garrett Barton, and a few others who all think that they deserve a shot because they look at Congressman Rice's vote as is a big sign that he's not committed to the conservative ideals that most of us stand for. So it's going to be an interesting race.
I think it's very interesting. And, you mentioned something to me a minute ago that I think is great for anybody who's ever considering getting into politics, anybody considering getting into any kind of a leadership role, right? You talked, I love the term freshman. And now, so you, of course, have been proudly serving House of Representatives and doing an amazing job. I think most people that I ever talk to, they feel like you're one of the good ones, right?
Depends on who you talk to. What day you talk to them.
Well, I talked to your mom, and she said, no.
My mom, who used to be my constituent. She's moved. I can't count on her vote anymore.
Well, that's a shame. But you talk about the freshman thing, and really what it comes down to is experience. Do you find from your experience, are you getting better at this as you go?
Life is learning, and I always am learning. When I ran, and I joke that the 3 of us who ran for my seat when it came open, and it's the Republican primary for that race, we all got up and made all of these statements of what we were going to do, none of us having an idea of what we really could do. And now that I'm into it, I'm beginning to understand how it works. I'm beginning to understand how you get a voice. And it comes from being there, building relationships. Somebody told me early on that politics is about building relationships. And it really is, because when you have something that you're promoting, you're pushing, you need to get people on your side. You need to get people from Greenville, people from Hilton Head, people from Aiken, doing something that is in the best interest of your constituents. And until you can build those relationships, you have a tough time getting something moving.
Yeah.
Some people can do it quicker than others. Some people are very good at that and come right in and can hit the ground running and build those relationships. But a lot of them come in and they think that they've got the best idea and they're going to do it come, I'll say heck or high water.
Thank you. PG show here.
There you go. They'll do it come heck or high water, and it doesn't work that way.
Right.
The lone wolf usually gets trampled.
Oh, sure. I mean,
there.
I can imagine like maybe the promises get a little bit more in check maybe along the way. You know, it's like at first maybe you're starting with everybody gets a $5,000 bill on day one, you know, and then after a while you start to go, oh, maybe I'll dial it back a little.
Well, the thing you have to remember about politics is we're all different.
Yeah.
Even in the same party, even within the same faction of the same party, you and I might agree on 4 out of 5 things, but that one thing we don't agree on is the thing that is going to make you not support that candidate.
Right.
And you have to really weigh what's important and what's not important. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really crucial for a voter. And I think it's very crucial for a leader that you have to make measured judgments about the stances you take. And you have
Absolutely.
to be willing to be able to explain it to people and be willing to, you know, I always make the joke when we're taking important votes, not a joke. I use the cliche. Do you want to die on that mountain?
Oh boy!
And sometimes you have to take those votes where this is a mountain I'll die on, mm-hmm. and you have to figure out what's important enough to do, and you have to stand by your conviction.
Yeah, it's almost like I imagine you have to stand behind your conviction, and you also have to know the counterpoints pretty thoroughly, so that when you're hearing them, you're like, yes, I thought that through, and here's why I still feel like I feel, right?
Well, that's the great thing about our system, though, I think, is that we open everything up to a debate.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I have come in saying, I feel strongly about this, and then I listen to the floor debate, and it might change my mind.
Okay. Yeah.
And that has happened. And I think the willingness to have an open mind too is really crucial. Mm-hmm. But keeping in mind that, are you going to die on that mountain?
Absolutely. Yeah, you still have to have the conviction you started with, you know, so it's like, yeah, and I think that's great leadership, and it's a great, not just for the political side of things, but any manager, we have to be like that, right? You have to have clear conviction as to why you're doing what you're doing. You also have to listen to the people and try to make sure that you're at least open-minded enough to consider alternatives. So
leadership, you know, I was always kind of puzzled by the term leadership, mm-hmm. because it's clear. Leadership is clear when you talk about the governor, the mm-hmm. president, when you talk about the president of a company, the vice president of a company.
Sure.
It's clear. That's leadership. But when you're serving in a state house and you're one of 124 other people, or if you take the whole legislature and you're one of 160 some people, are you really a leader? Mm-hmm. My answer to that is you are.
Yeah.
Because you are voting on things that will affect a lot of people, and you might be shepherding, you know, having introduced a bill that's going to affect a lot of people. So leadership really, I think everybody has the capacity to be a leader in whatever role they have. Mm-hmm. And the people who in roles that aren't your typical leadership positions, if they can exhibit leadership traits, they're not going to stay in that smaller position or in that lower position, entry-level position for very long. I encourage my children. I encourage kids when I go out and talk to them, adults when I go out and talk to them. Don't be afraid to exhibit leadership qualities
mm-hmm.
if you have them.
Even if you're not technically
even if you're not in that position,
yeah.
because a leader's going to recognize that as one of their own and help you along.
I mean, 100%. And I've got so many questions to ask you, but I will say that, you know, that we have this talk at work sometimes. You know, we're blessed at Monarch Roofing to have a lot of employees. And, you know, sometimes people will say, you know, there's already somebody on top of me. So where is my path? And I go, look, if you're a leader, I'll find a path for you. And mm-hmm. You can be a leader picking up trash on the side of the road. But what does that look like? It looks like the person who says, you know, I want a little bit more than I had yesterday. You know, let me be the best trash picker upper. And then, you know, give me another opportunity to do something else. That's what leadership looks like to me. That's where the opportunities come from.
Yeah. Who works hardest? Who works smartest?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. So when you first got into this, and you already had great name recognition, I'm sure. You've been on the TV for years.
That helped.
It helps a little bit. That's probably step one in maybe making people like you. But how else did you go about getting that critical following that you needed? Because obviously there's campaigning, but what's the thing that you think makes the difference in doing exactly what you said, getting people behind you to take up the cause and to vote for you?
If you want to learn a lot about who you are, take on leadership, take on something that will have a great effect on people, because you have to quickly figure out who you are. Mm-hmm. And when I started down the road, I thought I could be well qualified for this, because I understand politics, I understand the way things work, because that was my career for a long time, was being being a paid spectator, mm-hmm. and having relationships and conversations with leaders. Mm-hmm. What I did when I was trying to find that center, so to speak, and I think a lot of businesses do this, is you sit down and you strategize, what's my, what is my mission statement? What is my goal? And my mission statement, or what really kind of grounds me is it good for my community? Is it good for my business? Is it good for my family? Mm-hmm. And I say that anything I vote for has to check off at least two of those in my head before I'll support it.
Wow.
And you really can't go wrong if you're trying to support your family, you're trying to support your community, and you're trying to support your business. Sometimes issues will come up where it might hurt one while it helps the other, mm-hmm. and you have to weigh it. But if you have something that is your guidepost, I mean, something obviously beyond your faith and mm-hmm. beyond your party affiliation, there you go. And I work with Democrats. Yeah. In Columbia, I work with people on the other side of the aisle. In building those relationships, you have to, mm-hmm. because sometimes you'll have a vote that you need help from the other side, because you might not have enough people on your side of the aisle to get what you think is important across the finish line.
That's a good point.
And you'll find people who you would assume would never go along with you. I'll give you a good example. There's a representative named Caesar McKnight. Mm-hmm. He's a Democrat from the Lake City, Sumter area. And one thing that one bill I really supported was the Save Women's Sports Act, where a biological male plays as a biological male, biological female. It makes sense. My wife always says common sense doesn't grow in every garden, and I think in this day and age we're learning that. Yeah. But that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And it was really great to watch Caesar McKnight from the other side of the aisle that was really against the Save Women's Sports Act.
Sure.
He was that champion. He sponsored that legislation.
Wow.
He helped get that through. So you can't always assume that the person who you assume is your enemy is your enemy.
Absolutely.
In this particular battle, he might be your friend.
Yeah.
He might be your compatriot. And you have to look at everybody like that. We're going to disagree at times, but when we do agree, that's the time to build that coalition and to get the ball going.
Right.
So that compromise is crucial.
I think the fair part, keep the channels open. Obviously you know where you stand, but you got to keep the channels open. Love that. And by the way, before I move on from the likability side, I want to tell you, my wife, my mom loved you. They're sad to see you not on TV anymore. But anyway.
Well, you can see me now.
There you go.
No, I miss it too. And I always joke around. People say, do you miss TV? And I always say, I miss the paycheck. But, right. As my business becomes more successful, the financial stability is a little less concerning, but I miss that. I really do, and that's why I have a radio show still. Not to plug it on you.
Yeah, no, please
94.5. I guess you're not in competition with it. Right. But I enjoy being able to discuss things and having somebody's willing to put a microphone in front of me and somebody's willing to listen to me. So
absolutely.
I like still having that.
Well, I can tell you, 94.5, we actually do quite a bit of work with them. So what time's this show come on and when?
10 o'clock Saturday mornings.
Okay.
We recorded on Fridays, actually. We just recorded it before you came in here. As you mentioned, I think I was talking to Russell Fry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's been a lot of fun. And, TV, my career in television, from the time I started as an intern to the time I left in February 24th, 2017, not that I'm remembering, but
right.
I feel like Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You know how Forrest Gump just always ended up in the middle of history?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I felt a lot of times like, oh my gosh, I'm Forrest Gump here. You know, I was at the Olympics about the time the Centennial Park bombing happened.
Wow.
As a photographer from a station in Augusta.
Boy, that must have been a scary moment too.
It was, well, I wasn't right there when
Yeah.
it happened. We were in the vicinity and got down there right after it happened. But I mean, I was there for that part of history.
And I guess I mean just kind of in the sense
Yeah.
of like you don't know what else is tied into that at that point. So it's like, yeah. Okay.
So I got to be there. I got to when 9/11 happened. I talked to it just happened to be living near us, one of the guys who was one of the lead structural engineers for the Port Authority on building it.
Wow.
And I got to ask him, were these buildings designed to take an impact from an airplane? I said, you think about earthquakes, you think about tsunamis.
Sure.
You don't think about a jet loaded with fuel
Boy.
slamming into a building.
Absolutely.
You know, and it made me, it gave me a feeling of a closer connection to a lot of the stories I was covering.
Yeah.
And there are several examples. I was in Kuwait a couple weeks before the war started, and I can remember being there. And we got to stay with the 3rd Infantry Division, and we stayed with they gave us like the rank of a major.
Okay.
So
yeah.
we got a nice tent. You know,
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
keep all the dust
The
out.
fanciest
But we
of the
got a
tents.
nice tent.
Yeah.
You know, so we were kind of living large, comparably, you know, to a lot of people over there. And I remember one guy, it was a captain, and he was just not giving me any slack. I could feel tension, you know what I
Okay.
mean? And so one night I needed to go talk to somebody who was not staying in the camp we were based at, he was staying in another one, and he had a tie to Savannah where I lived at the time. And
Sure.
we wanted to interview him for something. I was trying to work out a deal with this guy to do it. And so as we're kind of, you know, negotiating what it would take for me to go over to this other area, he said, you know why I'm so against this? Or so against you and against everything else. I said, why? And he said, because what people don't realize is people are going to die. Some of the people you've interviewed are going to die. And all the news media is treating this like it's going to be a cakewalk up into Baghdad, and it's not going to be.
Oh boy.
And I thought to myself, wow, this guy's a little serious here.
Yeah,
you know, because this is before we knew everything that happened in the aftermath.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Sure enough, we got back to Savannah, the war, you know, shock and awe and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And within 3 months, a guy who I had interviewed, young guy, he was a scout, and the scouts go out ahead of the tanks and the infantry and look to see what the situation looks like. Just the coolest guy in the world. He's like 22, 23 years old, and he kind of reminded me like John Wayne. Well, we're going to be up here, and we're going to, he was very just calm and centered, and the kind of guy you would want in that position. And we got word that he was killed by a roadside bomb.
Oh boy.
Outside of Baghdad. And I went down and I interviewed his fiance, or no, I think it was his wife. They just had a little baby, and I remember remembering that guy, remembering that conversation I had with that captain, and man, stuff
Boy,
like that.
that hit a little too close to home.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I had a lot of experiences throughout my career where I got a little bit more personally involved in the story. Maybe not personally, but it developed the way I look at things and the way I weigh and measure what I do, because you can't just assume anything.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's fair. People, I think it's too easy for us to, sometimes you're watching the things on the TV almost like it's a TV show. But at the end of the day, I mean, these are people out there that are putting their lives on the line. And in that particular case, my dad was in, Desert Storm, Air Force. And so spent time over there. And it's a humbling feeling to realize that people can die. And so that had to be tough. Was there ever a time where you were just so physically upset about something or that you got so experienced that it truly like stuck with you for a while? I mean, that sounds like one, but is that something that...
I won't get too graphic with it, but one of the things I think one of the pitfalls or the consequences of what I did for a living in local news and what every reporter you see out there goes through is crime. And covering crime was always difficult.
Yeah.
I hated having to talk to the widow or talk to the child who was left parentless,
Sure.
or the parent who was left childless. And there was a story when I first started, and again, this was when I was a photographer. I started off as a videographer for a couple of years before I made the move on the other side of the camera. And I really enjoyed it because I always wanted to be Steven Spielberg.
Of course.
And,
Jurassic Park, right?
Oh yeah, just telling stories visually. I was, I took a job in news only because they didn't have room in the advertising department for a shooter there.
Okay.
And I always joke with the guy because the guy told me, we'll have an opening in a few months, just go up in the news for a little while, and once we have that opening, you come down with us.
Yeah.
And I saw that guy about 5 years ago, and I said, does that position ever come open? I'm still waiting.
Still waiting for the call.
But anyway, so I started in Savannah, moved to Augusta. It was my first job on my own. I was having to pay my own way, living, renting a house and doing all of that fun stuff you do as a young adult. And we covered a story that happened outside of Augusta. It was in a suburb of Augusta. And it was 3 kids that were out one night, 3 or 4 kids. It was 2 or 3 boys and 1 girl. And what happened to this girl was absolutely horrific. She was, tortured, assaulted, and not to get too deep on you, they stuck a pipe bomb in her mouth and blew it up.
Oh my gosh.
At the end.
Oof.
And that hit me hard because I wasn't that far removed in age from these people.
Right.
And to think that somebody has the capacity to do that kind of evil always stuck with me.
Stick with you,
It's just, that was horrible. To this day, I remember that story because I really, really didn't like the content of what we were talking about.
Oh my God, I can only imagine.
But you have to cover those stories. But yeah, I would bet that there are a lot of reporters who get into stories like this and get very attached to the people they're interviewing and probably suffer some type of post-traumatic stress because
I was just thinking that, yeah.
You're exposed to people at their most vulnerable. Another one I remember, I always think maybe I'll go back and write a series of novels, fictionalize
absolutely.
some of this stuff.
Sure.
But, there was a some Mennonites that lived outside of, I believe it was in Bullitt County or Georgia, or I can't remember the name of the county Metter, Georgia's in, off the top of my head now. It's been so long. But anyway, these Mennonites, a child died, and the coroner believed that there may have been abuse involved. And the Mennonites, like the Amish, they're a very tight-knit community.
Right.
Don't take to outsiders very often. And I was sent up there to cover this story to try to get to the bottom of it. And I actually developed an off-camera relationship with some of the Mennonites and got to know them. And that was a really, and I thought to myself, I'm all 26, 27 years old at that point. And I was like, I never would have thought my life would be like this, developing these relationships to get these stories and to tell these stories. And that was another one that, from earlier in my career that really kind of made me appreciate what I was doing, because I kind of consider my career in journalism as my master's degree in life.
Yeah,
because I learned
see that
every day you're an expert on something different. One day it's juvenile dental procedures. The next day it's an aircraft manufacturer's way of looking at where they're going to build a new plant.
Yeah.
You're an expert for a day. So I tell people I know a little about everything and a lot about nothing.
You heard it here first.
I hate to tell you, my wife will tell you I know a lot about nothing. But,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's were you always so confident on the air? So let's go to your very first time you get on the air. You get the mic. You have the earpiece. They're probably talking to you. Well, did you come on guns blazing, or were you like, "Hi"?
Never. I was always really shy, and growing up, I did a little. The only thing that I did a little outside of sports. I did a little acting in high school, but
nice.
I didn't like the stage stuff. I was a little too intimidated.
Give me one of the roles you played. I gotta know, like
Riff in West Side Story.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
When you're a jet, you're a jet. All the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. You heard it here first.
Oh my gosh, it still remembers the lines and everything. That was magical.
Yeah, that was, and it was. I liked it, but at the same time, I knew I always had that in me.
Yeah.
But I kind of I think your insecurities and your, just being a young person trying to figure out who you are, you don't want to put too much out there because you're afraid of what people are going to say about you.
Exposing yourself a little much,
In fact, I got a C, I think, in public speaking in college. Yeah,
wow.
I mean, it's like I always tell people I did not set the world of academia on fire, but you would have thought that I would have done well in public speaking, and I didn't. I'll tell you what did it for me was waiting tables. And I waited tables my senior year in college. And waiting tables, when you go to when you're at a restaurant, think about that server. They're having to approach somebody who they've never met before.
Yep.
Most of the time, these are 20 to 25-year-olds who are coming up to you, trying to build a quick relationship with you. You have to like them. You have to trust them. And they have to give you that feeling.
Oh, heck yeah.
And I mean, this wasn't going through my head when I was doing it.
Sure.
It was just kind of, to me, it was almost like riding a roller coaster. It's like, man, I really don't want to get on that thing, but I'm going to because I know that I'll regret it if I don't.
Absolutely.
And that's what waiting tables for me was, okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do it. So I did. And that's what opened up my personality and what got me going. And so lo and behold, to make a long story longer, one of the customers at the restaurant that I worked at was a fine dining restaurant on River Street in Savannah. The main anchor for one of the local TV stations was regular.
Okay.
And I think he's still around, but he's in. Yeah, I think last I checked, he was out in Colorado, so he won't mind if I say this.
Yeah.
He liked to drink between shows.
Oh,
and so he was at the bar between all these shows, and I got to know him. And I won't mention his name just in case.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
But anyway, he. I said, listen, I got to do an internship somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm in communications. I settled on communications because my dad taught me out of psychology. He was a physician. He said, you're not going to make any money.
Probably smart.
You're going to work for the government. You're not going to like it. So do something else. I thought, what else can I do? A friend who was in communications, he said, well, with this, you can do anything. You go into marketing. You could go into it's your 4-year degree. So that's why I kind of focused on communications, and I really fell in love with it. I mean, a communications major, for those of you who didn't go through too many communications classes, it's very philosophical, and it's very it's kind of interesting to think about how we communicate and the ways we communicate. So I really liked that part of it, but when it came down to how am I going to make a career out of this, I don't know. So I thought, okay, an internship at a TV station, because that's what my advisor told me. Get on with a TV station. So I interned in the advertising department and and then also went over to the news department, went to all these other departments, and it was eye-opening to me because it had cameras, which I really liked. I wanted to play with the cameras. Had these people who were brave enough to be on TV, but they'll never want me on TV. I'm not good-looking enough. I don't have the voice. I don't have this. I don't, all those things that you tell yourself to keep yourself from doing something.
Understand,
And so I did that for a while and got good with the camera. Got my first full-time job outside of my internship, like I mentioned, in Augusta. I was in my mid-20s at the time, went through a really bad breakup, moved back home with my parents and, with my tail between my legs. And I get a phone call. I had sent out all these resumes because I wanted to go into sales. I figured at that point, I'll go into sales, I'll make money. That's where they say the money is.
Yeah.
So one of them I sent to a radio station. The guy who was a DJ at the radio station was also the morning show anchor at the TV station I'd interned at there. And he picked up the resume and he called me and said, well, we don't want you for sales at the radio station, but how about over at the TV station? We really need a photographer. At this point, my dad was like putting applications for fast food restaurants on my desk telling me I need to get over my heartbreak and get out and work.
Right.
And so I said, okay, fine. It'll get me out of the house. I'll be on a road to doing something different. And I told myself, if I'm going to do this, 6 months, I'm going to be on TV. I said, that's the rule. If I don't do it, then I get out of that and I get real serious about something else.
Okay.
There we go. Wow. Here I am.
Well, it's a great story. Let's go one, and I like to follow up on things I hear. So you are apparently a huge Forrest Gump fan.
Yes, not huge. It's been a part of my life.
Yeah. Fair enough. What most unrealistic scene in the movie? Let's both share ours, because there's a couple that are a little bit of a stretch. I'm gonna say when he puts his face into the T-shirt and to wipe the mud off, and it looks like the smiley. I'm gonna say that's a bit of a stretch.
The cake. And I think when he shook Lyndon Johnson's hand, and he said something about So it was like seeing one of the guys without a shirt on or something.
Oh, yeah.
He said, it's like, he wouldn't have said that to me. He wouldn't have talked like that.
No. We're going to suspend disbelief only so far, guys.
Well, here's the story with that. They filmed that movie in Savannah. I didn't even know what it was other than Tom Hanks was filming a movie there.
Sure.
At the time, and again, this was the early 90s, 93, 94, my nephews were teenagers, and my sister ran Chatham Area Transit, which is the bus system.
Okay, yeah.
So the bench scenes and the buses coming by were my sister's buses. And so she got to go down there and hang out when they shot that. My nephews got to play hacky sack with Tom Hanks.
No way.
And they paid, this was incredible to me. They spent like $10,000 to get a sign that said Savannah Transit Authority. Because in the early 80s, it was called Savannah Transit Authority. They changed their name to Chatham Area Transit later. So they paid to get these buses decked out like they actually were in 1980 Savannah.
My gosh.
I thought that was just really cool.
The amount of detail that goes in, it's like a $10,000 expenditure. You would never think it, right?
Yeah.
Man.
And then a lot of the TV reporters that show up around the hurricane scene. I worked with the anchor who I wasn't going to name was one of them. Peter Bannon was one of them. It's just interesting. That and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, my Savannah ties. I had a lot of ties, particularly to Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. A lot of people in the book I either worked with or knew through, working downtown in a restaurant. So
gotta tell you.
It was a neat, like I say, I'm Forrest Gump. I just happened to be in some
the
right places at the right time and got to have a unique look at history in the making.
Does this extend to your ping pong game as well? Is it really? Should I get out a ping pong table?
It's just like tennis. Some people serve and you just can't return it.
You just can't.
How do you return a 95-mile-an-hour tennis ball and keep it within the little?
It's fascinating. Well, here's another one: racquetball. I've got a father-in-law. I don't know how he does it, but he can hit that ball in the one spot. I can't get to it. I'm like, I don't even know.
Exercise, though.
It is.
That was about my only exercise in college. We had a little outdoor racquetball court.
Okay.
A few of my roommates and I would go down, and we didn't know what we were doing, but man, we were sweating and having a good time. And it's fun. That's the thing. It's a lot of fun. Tennis is too, unless you're playing against somebody that has a great serve.
Yeah, somebody
you can't return it.
When they're acing you left and right. A little less fun, but well, let me talk about one more thing. And we're in the famous toastery in Carolina Forest here. Yeah. Great food. I've been here all the time. I love the food here. Love the service here. It's so hard to find good people nowadays, and your staff is always so nice. We were talking about, me and my staff were talking about that today when we came in. It's like you always have the nicest people here. Yeah. Just curious, tell us how did you start this business? Because I know you and I talked one time. We were in Columbia, and you've always been great, by the way, coming in and getting amongst your people, right? Yeah. But you told the story about why Famous Toastery. If you could share that with the listeners for a minute, because I think it's a great story.
Well, I was working at the TV station, and particularly, the last 10 years or so of my TV career, I was never home at night. Mm-hmm. I was always, stuck at the station between shows because I worked at 2 p.m. to midnight shift.
Wow.
And it got old, especially as the kids got to be, outside of the infant stage. It was really tough not to be with them and not to see them and not to be around the family, just not have a normal life.
I understand.
So my wife and I had always, from the time we got married, we'd always talked about opening a business. We were going to open a Quiznos at one point.
Okay.
And we were really close to it, met with the district manager. This was in Georgia. And for some reason, it just didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness it didn't, because when's the last time you had a Quiznos?
Oh, it's been a minute.
Yeah. When's the last time you saw a Quiznos?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that didn't happen, and that was good. That we put that to bed, went through everything, and then I was actually having lunch with a guy at his restaurant. Well, I'll tell you, it's called Groucho's. Mm-hmm. Groucho's used to be up near WPDE, so I'd stop there every day on my way to work to get something to eat, and got to know the owner pretty well. And he talked about the brunch business, and it got me to thinking about the brunch business. So I started thinking about that, and I talked to my wife about it. She loved the idea, and we started looking at a different opportunity within that. And I didn't feel good about it. It just seemed kind of like a factory. We put together the food, we send it out, everything comes in a bag, we squeeze it out, and give it to you. There wasn't much passion to it.
Yeah, I feel you.
So we went, when something fell through with them, and plus they just kind of made me mad with trying to get some property.
Okay.
So I Googled brunch spot. I wanted to find a brunch franchise because I didn't want to work nights.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find a place that had a headquarters within driving distance of here, because I didn't want to be stuck looking for support to somebody who's out in California
Makes
or Colorado
sense.
or something like that. So I just Googled that, and Famous Toastery popped up. I thought, that's a weird name. And I looked at the website and the food they had, and I said, that doesn't sound bad. So I called the guy, called the number, and the guy called me back who was in charge of franchising then, and we had a great conversation. Drove up. In fact, the week of the historic flood, we've had so many of them, but this was the one.
Which historic flood was it in the
was
last
the
5
first
years?
one. It was like 2014, 2015. Sure. And we drove to Charlotte and went to the first they have tons of Famous Toasters. That's where it started, was in Charlotte.
Yep.
So hence the driving distance. So we went to one up there. It was too long of a wait to sit down though. So we went to another one that was about 15 minutes away. I had breakfast and I had an avocado Benedict and a cup of coffee and I think a side of fruit. And that avocado Benedict was awesome. And then I sipped the coffee and I was like, ooh, that's my kind of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the typical hotel restaurant coffee you normally get. It's called Lavazza. I didn't know that at the time.
I didn't even know that. And for some reason, I'm going to plug your coffee. If you ever want like a little extra pickup, I don't know what it is you guys do with your coffee, but it gives me a little extra something.
Well, it's called Lavazza, Lavazza. And if you ever watch that Netflix show called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld, they're the major sponsor. So anytime they're out getting coffee, you see Lavazza all over the place.
Guys, write this down for me.
I thought that I was the only one who knew what Lavazza was until I saw that on that show one time. And we just kind of fell in love with it because it was, you could tell that it wasn't just thrown together. It was somebody made it. Somebody took time and made it. And so we came back and said, let's do it. So we started rushing around looking for a place to build. We wanted to go in Carolina Forest. We knew that much because we live here, B, it's centrally located, I think, in the county.
Sure.
So we started making our efforts to get it going, and man, it was a tough first 3 years. It was difficult. There were mornings I woke up saying, "Why did I do this?"
Oh yeah,
why
I can imagine.
I do this? But I think that's when I said, you know what, I own this place. Yeah. This is I need to fully vest in it, and I did, and I really put all my effort and energy into seeing how things worked. And I'm not saying I did a great job because there's still times every day when I'm like, oh man, that was a dumb decision.
Right.
Why did
Always
I decide to do that? Why did I do that?
Yeah.
So but once I got a lot more serious about it and wanted to make sure that I could, that's where I think I learned a lot about leadership. In my early career, I learned about it by being a news director and a managing editor and things like that. And I had I hired a few people and I fired a few people and I got that out of my system. And then by the time I opened my own business, not only was I learning a whole new business, but I was learning a whole new role within that business.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a tough learning curve. It really was.
I can imagine.
If news was my master's in life, then this was my master's in business. And I don't know that I've earned it yet or if I graduated yet. Time, the jury's out on that one. But we've had a lot of fun, and it's so great because I see the same faces in here day after day. Yeah. Same people coming in to eat. I've watched babies born who were conceived when we opened and are now 4 and 5, 6
That's
years old.
That's kind of cool, yeah.
Unfortunately, people who passed, and I've really, that's what I love about it. I love the people. I love the idea that they love us enough to come back time after time. I knew they would because I knew I loved it. I figured if I like it, they're gonna like it.
They're gonna like it, right?
So it's been fun.
I see in Tim McGinnis, and I can tell you, it's been a great interview for me because I think there's a lot of great things you've done. You've never been scared to take the big swing. You've had sort of, and what I'm hearing today is you talk about there's the TV career, and then there's the political career, and here you are, you're a business owner, and it's something I always like to remind people of. Everybody wants to be a business owner. It's so much work, it's so much research, it's so much preparation. You put a lot of your heart into it, so I certainly respect that. As we wrap the show, and we could talk for hours and hours for sure, but as we wrap this particular show, is there anything that you would want people to know about you, the man, as far as just something that you don't think people know or something that they do know that you're most proud of? I'm
most proud of my family, my kids. I mean, that goes without saying. But I mean, I just want people to know I do not think that I think sometimes I worry that people think that I just think I'm this great guy who I am full of flaws. I'm humble at the fact that A, people would vote for me, B, people would eat at my restaurant. I mean, I just hate to think that there's that perception out there that because I was on TV for so long that I think a lot of myself, because I think enough of myself, but I don't think a lot of you have to have a certain amount of self-confidence, but I'm definitely not I don't think I've done anything any better than anybody else has done. I look at you and I'm inspired by the fact that you work for this successful business that, man, I see all over the place.
I appreciate that.
I know y'all are doing a great job, and I see so many people in our community, people who are moving here who just have these incredible stories behind them. I mean, we have leaders of industry, we have former professional sports players, we have so many. We have such a rich area. We live in such a rich area of people, I think we haven't even really scratched the surface of what all of these new people are going to do to make this a better place to live.
Absolutely.
I really do think we have a bright future. I think what we're going through right now, what we've probably been going through here since 2000, is just growing pains. We're growing, and until we kind of settle into it a little bit, I don't think we're going to be fully formed, but I think once we are, we're going to see a great culture develop here. And we already have great people and a great mindset and in my opinion, we have great leadership in Columbia.
Absolutely.
We have leadership in the county. Oh. That's for a different podcast. But we have everything necessary to be successful in the future. It's just a matter of the right people stepping up to the plate and leading the team. And I love election season. I love campaign time because I've met so many people who are stepping up to the plate for the first time ever in some cases, who have lived here and worked here and helped build us into what we are. And they're coming up now and they say, I want my shot. And Absolutely. That's awesome because we're going to go through cycles of that, and we're going to develop just a really rich leadership.
And nothing wrong. A healthy balance of veteran leadership and some new blood once in a while to get some new energy. Tim, it's been amazing having you on the show. I got to tell you, everybody come out to Famous Toastery and try it out. If you're looking for lunch, breakfast, or brunch, it's a great place to be. We definitely love it ourselves at Monarch Roofing. He's been a great leader for the community for South Carolina. We're grateful for that. Tim, thanks for being on the show.
Well, I got to tell you real quick before we go, just having seen Top Gun Maverick over the weekend and talking to you and looking, if they ever need a young guy to play a young Ed Harris,
okay, all right,
you're their guy.
I'm their guy.
You're their guy.
See that? Now that's. I think I'm going to go ahead and audition. I've been inspired. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
I hope I didn't bore anybody.
Oh no, this is amazing stuff. Well, we appreciate everybody listening. Crowning Connections with Rob Clemens. We'll see you guys next time.